Hi there.
Hello, Helen.
Welcome again to our Neurodivergent podcast. I'm here with Diane to talk about grief associated with identification of neurodivergence.
Mhm.
I'm Helen Neal, and I'm a autistic ADHD counsellor. So coming from both lived experience and professional experience on this topic area. And I'll just let Diane say hi too.
Hi, everyone. Hi. Yeah, Diane, also have autism and ADHD, career predominantly in education, and now I'm a foster carer and tutor and coach to neurodivergent teenagers.
So, as I said, there is certainly has been for me a certain amount of grief that can go along with that identification around uh, autistic
Mm.
and ADHD diagnoses, or indeed self-identification. So, I'm wondering how that has been for you, Diane.
Um, I would say, and I'm pleased that I have, personally, I'm pleased that I do have both those diagnoses for myself. But I will be honest and say that the first 2 years I grieved heavily after my ADHD diagnosis. And I don't think it mattered which diagnosis I got first. That happened to be the first one. So, I reacted to it. Um, and I was, I felt like I cried nonstop for the first year. And again, for me personally, I think that a big reason why I was grieving so much was because I had spent all of my life, for 50 years telling myself that my anxiety, that my low mood, that my exhaustion, that my, oversensitive, that I feel like I am to other people, or sometimes a bit over dramatic or over emotional, um, was because of the childhood and that I did have, which was with my parents splitting up when I was 6, which was living with my dad, with my 2-year-old brother, and kind of going through all those ACEs, those adverse childhood experiences that came along with, my parents separating, with, kind of having then a really difficult kind of attachment relationship with my mum, which went on into adulthood. And I just blamed all of what I saw as my negative stuff on that. So then when you kind of go, oh, hold on a second, I've got ADHD. So maybe I wasn't doing that, when I was 14 because my mum and dad split up when I was 6. Maybe I was doing it because I had ADHD. And then, if I'd known that then, would I have reacted in a different way? And so much beating up I did. Um, And I don't regret it. I don't regret having gone on that journey. It brought about other new things in my life, like changing my career, um, which I don't think I probably would have necessarily done yet if I didn't have the diagnosis, to know that I needed to give myself more time as well to learn more about this kind of new me. Yeah, sorry, long answer.
So it sounds like it was a difficult journey, but
Yeah,
a
yeah.
necessary one, you feel?
Yeah, without a doubt necessary for me. And I know that's different for everybody, but I think because I have had other traumas, not I think, I know that I have had other traumas in my life. I wanted to try and kind of maybe just compartmentalize a little bit, why certain things might have been in certain ways. Yeah.
So for you, actually, it was a grieving process that perhaps went alongside
Yeah.
some of that, what's happened to me as well.
Oh, so much, so much. I just, and my way of how that kind of manifested really was, yeah, for that first year being feeling lost, also being in the last year of the school I was working in, and knowing that I was being emotional, Well, that's how I felt I was being, whereas actually I was just going through a grieving process. Um, and that's also the time when I mentioned on a previous podcast, I lost, I suppose, 2 or 3 friends that I've been friends with for 30, 40 years. And I think, being honest, I think that was because I needed them. I thought I needed them to come on that journey with me. Whereas they was sort of, I felt they were stuck at the beginning going, no, we've always been your friends. We know who you are. We don't need to learn any more about you. And then I grieved all of that. Why won't you come with me on that journey? I need you to. But I've come out the other side okay. Yes, there has been, some losses on the way in terms of friendships, but new friendships have grown. And I don't grieve anymore. I grieve for not remembering which bit of me was Diane with all of that stuff going on as a child and a teenager. But I think, since getting my autism diagnosis, there's not the grief. There's really good understanding about my identification now. Um, and so I accept and understand that that was important to go through that grieving process. Yeah. Did you have
Yeah,
similar?
and I'm just thinking of what you described there it's another part of you that has raised your
Yeah.
understanding,
Yeah.
but at the same time there was a grief, perhaps looking back at
Mm.
that child and grieving for
Yeah,
the
yeah,
fact that they didn't understand what was going on
yeah,
because they didn't have that
yeah,
bit of
yeah,
information
yeah,
that would have been really helpful
yeah.
for them at the time.
Mm. Well, for sure, because you're going through life, aren't you, as a child, if you've got all those other things happening as well. And, that helps me, then makes me think about my foster children, and all the foster children that have had are also neurodivergent, but will have obviously also gone through traumas, and helping them to know what's, kind of what bit you're grieving and why. Um, because the mind becomes very complicated, doesn't it, when it's got all of that going on?
Mm.
Yeah.
And we're all shaped by what happens to us,
Mm,
but the realization that we potentially think differently
mm, mm,
helps us to understand that perhaps that shape and those cognitive differences help us understand their reactions sometimes as well.
yeah,
And I think that's really, really
yeah.
important.
And I've obviously also seen so much, in years of working in schools and working with parents, when they feel that grief of learning or realizing or working with you that their child, has a neurodivergence, um, or whether then that's them grieving themselves because they also think, oh gosh, yeah, I've probably got autism too, like my son or whatever it might be. Um, yeah, and how you do that sensitively and professionally, but also with empathy because you know what
Mhm.
it's like for them.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think sometimes it's not spoken about is
Mm,
the grief of what you imagined being a parent to be like.
mm,
And I don't think anybody
yeah.
gets that right in inverted
No,
commas.
no.
Nobody imagines their, but I certainly had a completely bonkers idea of what being a parent was, even when I was pregnant.
Delusion.
It's completely delusional about how complicated
Yeah,
just being a parent
yeah,
is.
yeah.
And we don't talk about that, the imagined
Mm,
idea of what it's going to be like versus the reality. And there is a gap that many parents, whether they have neurodivergent children
yeah,
or not,
yeah.
will be grieving
Yeah, for
because
sure,
it is
for sure.
different to what we thought might happen.
Might happen. I don't know if you know that lovely poem, Welcome to Holland.
Yes, I do.
Yeah. For
Yes,
those of you who
absolutely.
don't know it, it's about, as a pregnant person planning sorry, not as a pregnant person, as a person planning a trip to Italy, isn't it? But then they find out that they land in Amsterdam instead. But that wasn't the plan, isn't it? It
Mm.
wasn't the planned trip and all the things that they'd been organising and thinking about. But actually they land at Holland and Amsterdam is beautiful too. It just
Yes,
wasn't where they were, thought they were
exactly.
going.
And that's exactly the
Yeah.
point, isn't it? It's you, but it's still okay, I think.
Yeah.
And this is part of, the things that I work with.
Yeah.
We sometimes beat ourselves up about, and we feel
Oh
guilty
gosh, yeah.
for feeling that grief and
Oh,
feeling that loss. And
yeah, yeah,
it's
yeah.
totally understandable.
Yeah, and I think that's hard, isn't it? Because, us ADHD, autistic, people, people with anxiety, we are great at putting ourselves down. We are awesome at it. We could win medals for being, self-criticism. Um, and then I think if you add that stage of grief that you might be going through, absolutely, then, why are you doing this? Why are you feeling like that? Why are you behaving like that? Um, but, you know, I think it's really important to allow yourself to go through that process if that's what your body is needing you to do in terms of grieving. Um, because especially if you are an adult that's been, late diagnosed, just those little questions, isn't it? Oh my God, have I been masking for 50 years? Oh my goodness, have I been ignoring all of those, signs of burnout all of my life? Oh my goodness, this, oh my goodness, that. Um, what if I'd done that differently? If I hadn't have been that honest in an interview, would I would have got the job? Just blah, 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 isn't it? It's just, it's
Absolutely.
continuous, then questioning, all of those things. Yeah, we can be pretty hard on ourselves, can't we?
And I think, I'm thinking about you. You asked the question of what it was like for me,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I managed to curveball it
You
quite
did, I
successfully.
noticed that.
And I'm coming back to it now because that's not really very fair, is it? So I found one of the biggest things that I often find myself grieving about it is
Mm,
I still remember so many things as a child.
yeah, okay,
And, I remember hiding in the library
okay,
in my secondary school
okay.
because I couldn't deal with everybody, because I've got proprioceptive differences, and
Mm,
being in the playground, and
yeah,
it was just all too much for me. And I became a librarian.
right,
And
okay.
it's
As
a
well.
career because it was a good way of getting out at the time
Yeah.
of dealing with that. And, I'm I grieve for that child, and I look back, and I kinda wanna give her a hug.
Because you were having to be quick thinking and develop strategies, which are all great ADHD, skills at a young age, weren't you? Not knowing that you needed to do that and not knowing why you needed to do it. But, that kind of that survival, wasn't it? That you had to think of a way to make yourself feel safe in that situation.
Yeah, and I was very good at ADHD about lying about things that I needed to do in the library so that I could get in there as well. And one of the things that I look back on, I used to play a musical instrument, and I used to say, "I'm just going into this room, miss, to practice."
To sit there and rock
I
the corner.
just
Unregulated.
And I didn't practice. I just wanted to be away from everybody else, and I wanted my own space, so
Yeah,
I created it for
yeah,
myself. But actually, sometimes that wasn't possible,
of course.
and
Yeah.
that created anxiety,
Yeah.
and it came at a cost, not really understanding. And I think I grieve for that as well, the
Yeah.
time at university and in my 30s and stuff, when I was
Yeah.
kind of really anxious because I didn't really understand what I needed.
And yeah, and there was nobody else to help you understand that, was it? You were going through that personally,
Yeah,
and on your own,
absolutely.
as so many undiagnosed or young people are, and especially, decades ago when there was less support.
Absolutely. And
Um,
and I, and I came up with some really excellent strategies to work through that.
yeah,
I still, it's because of the way I was wired, and I worked it out, and it worked for me.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
But I think that, it would have been so much more helpful if I really understood myself. And
yeah.
that's part of the grieving process. And, there've been tears,
I'm sure, I'm
there's
sure.
been anger too,
Yeah,
as
yeah,
well.
yeah.
Why did no one
Mm.
notice?
I know, like you said, wanting to give that girl, who you were, that hug, isn't it?
Yeah. And it's because people didn't really understand, there's no blame attached to
No,
why did no one
no.
notice. It's all about, and this is a
Mm.
good thing, that we have more understanding,
Yeah.
and particularly around women.
Yeah.
And I think
Yeah.
we're playing catch up, and that will take years and years.
Yeah, and I think, I remember you and I speaking, about this a couple of years ago in terms of, catch up. And I think, yeah, it might be, and I think it definitely will be years and years still, won't it? But in the meantime, just, if you are going through that grieving process
Mm.
or worried about identifying yourself, as maybe being neurodivergent because you don't want to go through that grieving process, um, maybe just see whether that's the right thing for you to do and whether you feel it's the right time in your life as well, isn't it? Because you need to, you know, you you need to allow that space for that to happen. And I think, I getting my ADHD diagnosis when I was still a head teacher, on reflection, that was complicated. But I, wasn't going to retire as a head teacher and then do all that. It happened at the time I wanted it to. Um, But then it's and then you also don't want people saying, "I haven't got time. I haven't got time to grieve." If you are kind of denying yourself something that
Yeah.
you want to go, you want to explore.
It's
Oh,
allowing the
yeah.
space for it, isn't
Yeah.
it?
Yeah.
And actually
Yeah.
being kind enough to give
Mm.
yourself that space.
Yeah. And I think that's the key point, isn't it? Um, and feeling that you can be supported a little bit through that, even if it's just a friend knowing or a family member knowing or whatever, however small, you want that network to be, because like with any grief, you need somebody just to keep an eye on you, don't you?
Yeah, and I think that acknowledging that it's a perfectly understandable emotion to
Yeah.
be going through and to be
Yeah.
feeling as well
Yeah. Yeah.
for yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, when I think back, when I'm thinking about teenagers that I work with that know about their neurodivergence, um, they are, yeah, mostly accepting, but I have kind of, I suppose, seen that grief maybe take a more different route in terms of rebellion or kind of outbursts or, rather than maybe the sitting weeping in the corner that I felt like I did for a year. But everybody's an individual, aren't they? And I think as long as they've got somebody making sure that, they are still safe
Yeah,
in how they are reacting and responding to that, to that grief, then, we should be allowed to grieve in the way that's right for us.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And I guess you're talking about there, and we did touch on it a little bit, about, and this is a reaction from me personally, and I've probably experienced it with others, is that I definitely experienced internalized ableism,
Mm.
in that
Yeah.
I was thinking, "Oh, I can't be autistic, I can't be
Yeah.
ADHD because I've been taught that that isn't typical.
Yeah.
So, and I'm typical." And it was, and I can't be disabled. That's just ridiculous.
Yeah, absolutely.
And there was an awful lot of,
Mm.
and there still is sometimes, of grief around that too. It's again that kind of self concept that you
Yeah.
have,
Yeah.
the idea of yourself, and that rocks it. That
Yeah.
those identifications, they can rock it, and that is
Yeah.
absolutely something
Yeah.
that we will all grieve.
Yeah. And I think that, once if it's a diagnosis that, you were seeking, like, you and I did, as soon as you get that email or that attachment or that letter or whatever, isn't it? It's bang, isn't it?
Mm,
That's it. Everything changes, but nothing changes all in that moment that you,
absolutely.
or, or that person tells you yeah, you are now autistic. Oh, um, you know, it's, and I remember that, you know, that phrase I just used. I remember a mum saying that to me about her own child. She said, it's changed everything and it's changed nothing.
Mm.
And that's, you know, that was about 10 years ago. She said that to me, and it stayed with me because, you know, how can those two things be right at the same time? A bit of a paradox, isn't it? But I think it really sums up that experience for lots of people. Mm.
It's looking at life through a different lens,
Yeah,
isn't it?
yeah, yeah, yeah. And it doesn't mean it's negative, and it doesn't mean it's sad. Um, it was just maybe not the one you thought.
Mm.
Yeah,
Like you say,
yeah,
we've maybe got to Holland.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I do think it there's obviously that grief,
Mm.
but I think these two things can be true at the same time. Like you say,
Yeah.
there is also explanation and understanding alongside that grief.
Oh, so much.
And
Yeah.
that lens that
Yeah.
you look back on that
Mm.
causes the tears, you know,
Yeah.
and perhaps we're looking through tears at that new explanation
Yeah.
for something that perhaps didn't have an explanation before and didn't have a understanding, and hopefully forms acceptance after a while.
Yeah, and it's, if you are that person to, if it's happening to you, or, you know, you're that person that, you know, if you're supporting somebody, isn't it? To encourage yourself or to encourage that other person, the time that we've just spoken about, you know, the time that we might be needed, even if it's, okay, now I know I actually have got autism, I got that diagnosis, or, you know, I've really accepted that as an identification about myself. You know, is there anything I'm going to do now each day or each week or each month to help support that acceptance as well, you know?
Mhm.
Because I don't think it's necessarily great just to then wash it away, you know, and not do anything with that knowledge.
Yeah.
I think it's important to ask yourself some questions at least. And I think another thing that I do is, do I obsess? Probably yes, about neurodivergence. I think probably a lot of my friends would say I do, because talk about it a lot, because it's my job, you know, as well as it being me and as well as it being, you know, family members and friends. If I wasn't working in education and, you know, the world of neurodivergence, and I just happen to be, you know, somebody else that that has autism and ADHD, would I think about it and question it as much as I do? And I don't know the answer to that.
And I don't either, because I'm working in it too.
Exactly, exactly. So I know the right things, you know, that, you know, I would advise somebody to, you know, to do, to go through different processes in all of this. Doesn't necessarily mean I'm practicing them on myself. Try to. But yeah, that's the question I have. Do neurodivergent people that not work in education and therapy, etc., or fostering or whatever it might be, overanalyze the whole neurodivergence thing and the grief and all of that as much as you and I do?
Well,
Yeah.
I think that it's very personal, isn't it, to the
Yeah.
neurodivergent individual.
Yeah.
You could say that there is an autistic ADHD trait to always want to know the why,
Mm.
and if
Yeah.
something really interests you, then
Yeah.
you get pulled in.
Yes.
So I would say it's not surprising that we both do, but everybody's so different
Yeah.
though, aren't
Yeah.
they?
Very much.
And actually, that's part of the joy, I
Mm,
guess.
mm.
And you know, one of the things that is helpful with the grief is to find others that are going through that grieving process too,
Yeah.
and to find our tribes,
So important.
and to talk through it,
Mm.
and hopefully to listen
Yeah.
to people like yourself and me to show that you aren't on your own with those experiences,
Mm.
and they are
Mm.
totally valid and completely understandable. That grief is real and it's very raw.
Yeah.
You know, even when you go through the process, and the process can take such a long time,
Mm.
like you say, when you get that
Yeah.
email,
Yeah.
you're like, oh my God, it's like
Yeah.
literally someone's just smacked you in the face. And that's how it
Yeah.
felt for me. And
Yeah.
I don't know if it's anybody else's experience, but it certainly was for me. And that's quite a shock in
Mm.
terms of
Mm.
how powerful it can suddenly hit you, that grief.
Yeah, yeah. And you just remind me of something in terms of grief that I remember thinking for many, many, many years, probably nearly 20 years of having my own children. Oh yeah, my anxiety is really bad this week because it's really stressful at home and this is going on with the children, or da da da. Or I'm not surprised I've got low mood, and I would always, associate it or assign it to a reason. Or yes, of course, I'm absolutely burnt out, but I had flu a couple of weeks ago, rather than knowing why I was having those responses in my body. And I've lost my train of thought completely.
Perfectly
Good
understand.
old ADHD. Yeah, no, completely gone.
That's
Completely
absolutely
gone.
fine.
It'll come back in a minute.
I'm sure it will do. But basically, you were saying that it sounds like you were feeling that your energy levels maybe were not explained by necessarily what was going on around you, but perhaps more explained by the way you were. You
Yeah.
didn't necessarily know that. Is that what you were heading
Yeah.
towards?
I hope possibly. I will never know. In this complicated brain of mine.
Fair enough.
I think just just grieving. Grieving it's a tricky one, isn't it? And that's all I can remember.
Yeah, that's fair enough. It is a tricky one. So I think we're probably near the end of our chat.
Might be a good time to wrap my brain up, I think, when I say
I think maybe Diane's tired. Completely understandably. Grief is it's a tough one though. It drains our energy.
Yeah, and I think don't kind of miss that it does that, but it does that too.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah.
So thank you very much for listening to us.
Thank you.
And we'll be back again next week. It's a bye-bye from me.
Thank you, and apologies for forgetting the last bit there.
Completely understandable. And we come here in all our ADHD autistic glory.
Absolutely.
So we'll see you again next week. Take care, everyone.
Bye-bye.